before we started, I heard a little bit about this Facebook rant that you made,
Mm-hmm.
and I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Mm.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Okay. So I just there's a lot of there's a lot of I think there can be a lot of stress on educators these days to like encourage students to go into this business that's very challenging, and it can appear that there are diminishing opportunities, right? And so I'm going to preface all this with I think that there are educators that are trying to do like maybe in the back of their mind that they think they're trying to help. Okay, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say like, okay, let's assume that maybe that's the case, and then I'll probably go away from that. But I've just had too many conversations with educators that have said things to me like going into jazz is a dead end street and music education is dying, and like painting this very bleak picture um, of like what the music industry is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm sure you guys have experienced it,
Mm-hmm.
either from your peers or colleagues, or from it, maybe even from educators. And I think the whole thing is just a bunch of crap. I think it's just like it's just jive as the day is long to paint that picture, because like my second choice of a career was to be a lawyer, and that's hard. I know lawyers that don't make it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I had somebody that had told me too. They said, "Man, it's really hard for me when I tell my friends that my son is a professional musician, and they kind of wince, and then they tell me some story about how their cousin or their uncle or whatever tried to make it as a musician
Mm.
and didn't. It was really tough." And this person said to me, it was just brilliant. They're like, "Well, I really want to ask them, well, were they any good?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did they struggle because they sucked?"
Mm-hmm.
But she's like, "But that would be rude." So instead, as artists or those that support artists, we sit here and we silently take it.
Mm-hmm.
We go, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've kind of got a point in my career where like I just don't have to be quiet about this stuff anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to
Yeah.
be quiet because I think it's unhealthy, and I think that it doesn't do anybody any service. I think we can be realists about the obstacles that might be in front of us, but like what the world doesn't need right now is like more lawyers. What we need is more people who have studied music
Mm-hmm.
and learned how to be empathetic,
Hmm.
and maybe go into something else, which is fine. But what we need right now is more people who are good at anything in the arts,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
because it makes you better at everything else. So I'm just done being silent about it. So yeah, I called out a few people, not by name, but just in recent conversations, and I'm like, this is terrible. And here's the thing: most of the people that say music education is dying, or you'll never make it, as a performer or whatever, and I've said this publicly on my Facebook page, and I'm like, that's probably true if you play as well as the person that told you that,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
because most of the time people who have painted this really bleak thing like, oh, you won't be able to make it and it's dying and it's whatever, like they can't play that well.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds rude when I say that, but like I don't know. I feel like more and more I'm going to meet rudeness at the same at the same level, and not that I'm trying to be rude, but I like if you're going to be blunt with me, as an educator, and some of these are like respected about like how this is such a bleak thing, then I'm going to be bleak about like maybe your skill set has made you feel like that.
Boom.
Because I'll tell you what, like, what was
I
that,
was like,
Armin?
boom.
Yeah, mic drop
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
right? Like because but do you see how that is, like
Yeah.
as a culture
Totally.
and as artists, we've kind of sat around and listened and taken this rhetoric for too long, as far as I'm concerned.
And this
Yeah.
Like
this goes for everything too, like not even just music. We have a culture today of kind of I mean, I think this is what you're getting at, but giving every single person a trophy to some extent. And it's like we do,
yeah,
you do want to be nice. You're not trying to like destroy
sure,
somebody, but at the same
right,
time,
sure.
you got to be honest about the situation. Be like, yeah, you know, you're in jujitsu and maybe you get your butt whooped or something, and be like, yeah, you got your butt whooped because you're not as good yet.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to say, that was, not to like sidebar this, but I'm not training right now, but I did for maybe like 2.5 years. I mean,
That's sweet.
enough that like I can handle myself at the grocery store if I needed to, right? Like if somebody wants to mix it up in the parking lot, I'd be like, oh, we shouldn't really do this.
Mm-hmm.
But like there is a certain amount of confidence you get where it's like, well, like
Yeah.
there's just things that work.
Yeah, and you might be amazing at jujitsu, by the way. Don't take that as a personal blow.
Yeah, no, not at all. No, I'm not.
Okay.
Because here's the thing: I trained with guys that are really good,
Mm-hmm.
and there's levels, and that's how it is in music, also, right? But what I would never do is say to one of my black belt friends, like, "Oh, you'll never make it at jiu-jitsu." Like, who am I to say that? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a white belt, that just probably should have tested to be a blue belt, but never did. Okay, but I'm still like, like I'm a baby at this thing. The reason I did it is because it was so good for my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't worry about the mortgage. I didn't worry about my students or any of that stuff. When somebody's trying to break your arm, you're pretty focused on the fact that somebody's trying to break your arm. Like you're not worried about the stuff that you worry for 22 hours a day, normally. It changes your mind to think about something else. It's so healthy. And it was so awesome to get into this beginner baby kind of childlike learning mode too, where it's like, I know nothing. I am so like new at this. And what I realized was that helped my music because it got me back into beginner learning growth mindset. And it was like, there's so much to learn, right? Because like this guy's breaking my arm like 9 times a day, like 9 times per session. Every 1 minute I'm compromised. And it's like, God, it was so great. But yeah, my rant more is about like, I have silently for years listened to subpar musicians tell me and others how tough it is to make it in the music business. And I'm done listening to the negativity, or at least silently, and I've had this conversation with a bunch of people. I'm like, look, when you're really, really good, opportunities just present themselves, like that's the first thing. I say there's 5 things you got to do to be successful. Number 1, you got to be really, really good.
Yeah.
Because that takes luck out of the equation.
Right.
Like you have to be really, really good. And I mean, like that 1%, if you're there, it's not going to be hard to make it in the music business. People will always find a way. Like they'll always want to use you. Like, for gigs, they'll want to use you for sessions. They'll want to use you to teach. You will find your people.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Second thing you got to do, you got to show up on time. Third thing you got to do is you got to be a good hang. Fourth thing you got to do, you got to wear the right threads. And the 5th thing you got to do is you got to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, if you do 5 of those 5 things, guess what, man? You're undeniable. Nobody can stop you. Like you will find your people. You will find your, as they say, it's kind of cliche, but nowadays, but like you'll find your tribe, right?
I'd probably add one more to that.
What's that?
You gotta be prolific. If you are a good hang and you play well and you're responsible, but you don't do anything, no one's gonna care that you got.
Yeah, it's
you
cool.
got it.
Yeah,
you got to put yourself out there. Is what I would say to that as well.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, I kind of file that under there, like if you're really good, that's what you're kind of doing. It's assumed, but it's probably good to mention. It's probably good to mention that, Armin. I mean, that's a good maybe distinction.
Yeah.
But I'm like, look, if you do 5 of these things, luck's out of the equation. There's like no more luck. If you do 4 of these, 4 of those things, probably a pretty good chance you're going to be okay, right? And it's any 4. You do only 3 of those things though, and all of a sudden it
gets squirrely.
It's starting to get a little squirrely, right?
Yeah.
And if you only do 2 of those things, chances are you're going to need some serious luck, right? And if you're only doing one of those things, it's just not going to happen for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like, it won't happen. Like, you can just see the percentages of your success, like just like becoming crushingly low, you know, like crushingly low.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I just kind of got to a point where I was like, I don't think I'm doing anybody any solids by being quiet about this stuff.
Right.